To begin with, did you go to the movies a lot as a kid? And if you did, were there any films or actors that were particular favorites or influences for you?
Yeah, I remember being very upset when I didn't get to see Flash Gordon. I remember we queued up outside the local cinema in Killarney. My dad, my sister, and myself, and it was full to capacity, so we missed out. And then I remember when VHS or VCR first came into play, we got a videotape of E.T., but it didn't work on the video player. So I remember the frustration of that. For some reason, those two frustrations always come to mind when I think about early sort of cinema experiences. Then, of course, Superman was a big influence on me, enough for me to think that I was Superman also. And then I suppose a lot of American television, because in Ireland, specifically in the sort of rural parts of Ireland, we only got two channels, RT1 and RT2, so we didn't have the BBC or the British channels, which you would have got in Dublin. And so a lot of the programs that were on Irish TV were from America, so Chips,
Yeah.
Simon and Simon, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Fall Guy, so Magnum PI, The A-Team, Knight Rider, all those things. So they would probably be sort of early memories of.
And when did it first occur to you when did you first just try acting, even if it was for something silly, and then when did it occur to you that it was something you would like to do in the long run?
Well, it happened pretty fast from me starting to do it to realizing that that's what I wanted to do. But I was 17, and a guy called Donny Courtney, who had been a past pupil of St. Brendan's, where I was going to secondary school, or high school version in Ireland. There was no drama classes or anything like that in our school, and this guy came back and he set up a couple of workshop classes on a Wednesday afternoon, and I went to 2 or 3 of them, and then there was no more word of it. And I was like, oh no, I really enjoyed that. And then I saw him in town, and I was like, what happened to the classes? And he's like, look, I've started a professional company called Brick Roo in Killarney. Why don't you come and do some part-time work with us? So that was it. From then on, I was like, this is what I want to do.
And in terms of, people look back, they say they had a big break or something that opened the door to bigger opportunities. For you, looking back, what was that?
Definitely hunger.
But even I guess, was there something though that led even to hunger? How did you come to that point even?
Well, I think I did something when I was 18. When I was 17, I joined up with Donny's company, and we did like pantomime, pub theatre, a lot of sketch work, improvisation, stuff like that, workshops, and I just sort of absorbed as much as I could, and then I sort of broke off and formed my own production company with my friends, and we put on a play of Reservoir Dogs in the local nightclub Ravel's when I was 18, and I directed, produced, and played the part of Mr. Pink. And that was, for me, a great experience and a great learning experience. I learned so much from that in terms of just, doing things through blind enthusiasm and hard work. And I think that gave me a confidence in myself, and from then on went to study in Cork. From Cork I went to London, studied there for just under 3 years, and then left and started seeking professional employment from then on.
Was that did you go to Los Angeles?
I did after, my first television job was Band of Brothers, and it was an incredible break, an incredible thing to witness and be part of, and such good guys as well. Most of us really stay in touch until this point now. That was over 10 years ago. And so after that, I think we all went to Los Angeles en masse, and they were like, oh, so another guy from Band of Brothers. There was a lot of guys running around in green. And that was quite sort of overwhelming for me then, I would say, and I was about sort of 24 at that point, I think. And so I didn't really I didn't get any work from that sort of 3 months that I went over and just sort of did some meetings and stuff like that. And then I sort of came back to London. I decided then that I wouldn't go back to Los Angeles until I had something really in my back pocket,
Where had you been cast for Band of Brothers out of? Was that?
That was out of London.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we filmed most of it in Hatfield, where a lot of Private Ryan was filmed, and so I believe when you do that, you have to hire local crew as well as sort of American crew.
I had read in another interview that when you were cast for Band of Brothers, you had also auditioned for another part that didn't pan out, and I'm just curious for trivia people, what was that?
That was Pearl Harbor.
And which part?
It was for Ben Affleck's part, funny enough, which obviously was never on the cards for me. But Disney were really sweet, actually. After I did the audition, they sent me a letter, saying that they very much, enjoyed the audition and what I did, and obviously, unfortunately, it wasn't going to work out this time. But I thought that was really nice of them. They didn't have to do that. You get a lot of I got a lot of sort of rejection. It's not very often you get a nice little sort of follow-up letter, so that was nice.
What I think anyone who has sort of been following the film scene for the last few years, everybody knows about Hunger. It was it came out of nowhere and just blew everybody away. And I think the question that occurred to me was, for a role that required such a total commitment, what gave you so much faith in a guy who had never made a feature before, to work with, to trust, to put that kind of work into a film with Steve McQueen, who obviously you have good taste because it's all turned out well, but at the beginning nobody knew what, nobody could have known.
Yeah, well, full credit to Gary Davey, the casting director in London. He was like, look, Mike, you've got to get together and meet this guy. And he was like, I see you in the role, you've got to do this part. You've got to meet Steve. And I was like, yeah, of course. So I went in and I met him, and I just thought, this guy is different, and this guy's got such sort of empathy and honesty about himself and the world that he sees around him. And I asked him, I said, why are you making a film about Bobby Sands? And it was his choice to do that. Jan Younghusband had said to him, would you like to do something, part of sort of Film 4? And I think she went to Film 4, but she was the initial person that approached him. And he's like, I'd like to make a film about Bobby Sands. So I was like, why do you want to make a film about Bobby Sands, And he said, well, I always remember watching the news and seeing this man's picture on the screen. He was a young boy then, and each day there was a new number under his face. He was wondering what was going on. It was sort of an intriguing thing. His parents were religiously watched the news at 6 o'clock every night. And then you had the Brixton riots were happening in 81 at the same time. And then Tottenham Hotspur won the FA Cup. So I was like, there are three good answers, and sort of original, and there's a simplicity to them that I thought quite disarming. And so I just knew that I was going to learn something from working with this guy. So that was it. After the first meeting, I was like, okay, I've got a gun for this. Then he called me back in, and I did the audition, prepared as much of that middle section with the priest, that's scene, and I did a section of that for him, and that was it.
Wow. And it's probably the question you've had to answer the most, but for the record, can you describe what you went through for that part? I think it shows the kind of work that you'll do.
It was funny because we started off with all the stuff where I was at normal weight, and I just knew that we had done something pretty special with that. The main crux of that piece for me, and what was very sort of essential to get right, was the part with the priest, the scene with Liam Cunningham. That was the beast that needed to be tackled. In terms of losing the weight, I just knew that I had to get on a discipline and stick to it, and so that was just basically doing things by numbers, but really doing the work on that middle act, that second act of the piece. That's where a lot of work went into that, and a lot of energy in that, and then, as I say, then it was just a matter of me following a schedule for 10 weeks and just being sort of disciplined.
And just for the record, what was the end amount that because you were not looking so healthy there?
I don't know how it translates in pounds, but I got down to 58 kilo, which was the target. I had gone to a doctor, and he was like, look, if you get down to 58 kilo, he was like, that's, what we can sort of estimate from body fat, and blah, 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 all the sort of tests he did. was that's the safe sort of cutoff point. Anything below there, he was like, things might start to get a little bit tricky with organs and things like that. So that was the target, and I'm pleased to say sort of got there.
Yeah.
But I flatlined at around 65 kilos, week 5 I think, or week 4. So I had to break down the calorie count then even more for the last sort of 5 weeks to 6 weeks.
When you now see what, with the benefit of hindsight, what did Hunger, when it was finished and people began to see it and take it in, how did it change things for you in terms of your career?
Very simply, I mean, it was like you said, it was a filmmaker's film, so a lot of great filmmakers watched it, and it came at a time where the recession was right around the corner. This business was going to get affected like any other business. Less roles for less actors, certainly unknowns. It was going to be much more difficult for somebody to give you a break, give you a chance, and so came just really at the right time. And so then it allowed me to sort of work with such a host of fantastic directors, because even if maybe not a masses amounts of the public got to see it, definitely people that were interested in film did. And so the journey kind of started from there, really.
And the involvement with Tarantino, was that something that came directly out of that, would you say?
I know that was down to full credit and lots of love to him. Michael Cooper, my agent in America, really fought for that, and I think pestered Tarantino to the point where Tarantino was like, okay, just tell him to get the flight, okay, and just come to Berlin and we'll see him. So I got in a plane, went out there. That was already a very special sort of experience for me, having said that I did Reservoir Dogs right at the beginning when I wanted to start off. That was a film that affected me so much. He is a director that obviously has formulated his own genre of filmmaking. He's amazing. So to be actually auditioning with him, and he plays all the other parts, that was pretty surreal. And then to get offered the part, then I was jumping around for quite a while. So I don't know, had he seen Hunger, or whether he, Cooper had sort of pushed him to watch Hunger and sent him Hunger, but he was aware of it, I know that much.
And I imagine that totally exponentially increased your name recognition, familiarity in the industry. Is that fair to say?
Totally, yeah. And obviously, Tarantino is a name that everybody associates with Quentin.
Right.
It's
right.
His fan base is a very loyal one throughout the world, and very passionate. And a lot of the times very knowledgeable film people. So yeah, that kind of did, people started to sort of recognize me, I suppose, for the first time because of that.
And how did you, and it's only increasing as time goes by, but how do you handle that? Is that something that some people find it just absolutely unbearable and jarring, some people kind of feel it's, better than worse? What's your take on the whole idea of fame?
Listen, I don't have to really experience it that much. Most of the times, I went home back down to London, my neighbourhood, I just walk around and do my thing. I passed one guy and he goes, and I was like, and that's, it's like, that's cool. It's like a little exchange, right. And, things like that are fun. And, listen, how can I complain the position that I'm in, to be honest? I do like to sort of live my life fairly, low-key and do my thing. Just because I think, it's a distraction from my job if people know too much about me or become too much interested in me. And then how can I ask them to go on a journey with the character and sort of disappear into that world? So that's the sort of danger, I think,
With our remaining time, I just want to touch on each of the 3 great movies that you were part of this year, and I guess 2 of which the general public still has not seen, but will eventually. The first one, though, why risk it seems like it would be dangerous territory for an actor to get involved with such a familiar character, that's been done many times before by many great actors, as Rochester in Jane Eyre. What motivated you to take that on?
Just because of all those things,
yeah.
I like the fear element of it. I like pushing myself, taking risks. I thought the combination was an interesting one. I'd seen Sin Hombre. It was one of my favorite films of that year. I thought, this guy, Carey's got a really interesting and beautiful eye. He really knows where to put the camera and how to frame things and tell a story visually. and I was interested to see what he would do with this British sort of stalwart, piece, this British classic that has been done, as you say, I think 27 times. I don't know. And then Mia, I saw her in treatment. Sorry, and she just. I was like, wow, who's this girl? And look at her choices were so original and mature and interesting. And so I just thought this is a really good, interesting mix of people. Let's see what happens. And then, of course, on the top of that, you get actors like Jamie Bell, who I thought did a fantastic job with St. John and took him to a place, that, again, people hadn't done before. There's a darker element to him. In many respects, well, I think for sure he's way more messed up than Rochester, and that's saying something. And then Judi Dench, of course, who's like acting royalty of a generation that I think will never be surpassed. Real sort of masters of the craft, her generation. It's and she's just a wonderful person, and just still has these eyes like she's 16 years old. It's amazing.
So chronologically, which was next for you, Shame or A Dangerous Method, in terms of making it?
Okay, so it went Haywire, Jane Eyre, and then Dangerous Method, and then X-Men, and then Shame.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's right. I should have said 4 earlier because X-Men as well, but...
Well, maybe you didn't like it.
No. But with Dangerous Method, I was there, I guess it was Telluride the first time it was shown, and, well, no, because it was in Venice first, and then it came to Telluride, and just obvious question, how did it come about? You get a phone call out of the blue from David Cronenberg, or is it just, what's the origin of that? I would imagine that's a weird call to get.
You think you're in one of his films all of a sudden. You're like, yes, this is he. It's he's that's exactly what happened. He sort of asked would I be interested to sort of sit down and have some lunch. That they had this sort of script that he was interested in sort of making a film out of. That was originally a film, but then sort of actually became a play in reality, and he wanted to make a film of it. The Christopher Hampton script, dealing with Freud and Jung and this sort of mutual patient that they had. And just sitting down with him, he's such, I don't know if you've talked with him yet, but you probably have done in the past, and just hyper intelligent man. And once again, it was like just to be in that company and to learn as much as I can of that time period that we were allowed to work together was just something that definitely wouldn't turn down or miss the opportunity to be part of. And then, of course, the introduction then of Kira and Vigo, Vincent. I'm a fan of all these guys. They're top, people at the top of their game. They come to work, ready to go to work, and also have a great sense of humor. And don't bring their process into your process. It's just like, okay, let's go to work. Let's do this. And it was a really enjoyable experience, I have to say, as much as sort of an educational one.
And for people who see that and think that raises interesting sexual questions, then comes Shame. And I have to say... Tune in, right. You haven't seen anything yet. You haven't seen nothing yet. Again, was this something that you'd been hearing about from Steve McQueen forever, or was it something that just kind of came out of the blue from him?
No, he told me about the idea in 2008. We were actually having a dinner in the House of Parliament.
Wow.
In England. They were sort of throwing a dinner in celebration of Film Forum, their contribution to British film. And he told me after the dinner, he was like, I've got this idea, and he sort of whispered into my ear, he was like, don't tell anyone. And
what was your reaction?
I was like, let's do it.
Really?
And well, yeah. I was, the thing is, I said to him, obviously at the end of Hunger, and it was like, please, if you want to do this again, I would love to do this again. And thankfully he felt the same way. And he's just a great guy, and we become really close, sort of on and off set. And so, we have a very quick way of working, a very good shorthand, and we're on the same wavelength, and it's fun. And then Sean Bobbitt as well behind the camera, Joe Wright, who's sort of, in there, not Joe Wright, I've got it wrong. Joe, the editor, the name, second name slips
No
my mind.
problem. We'll cut it.
You know, these are the same team
Yeah.
that were in place for Hunger, and it was just like we sort of picked up where we left off. And you know, they're great heads and they're good people as well. You know, and it's a good sense of humor, and it's nice to sort of get along with the people that you're working with as well. You know,
Sure. And was it? I guess a question that's got to occur to most people that see it. Was it clear from the outset to you the extent to which you would be exposed? Shall we say?
Yeah, you know, I always expect the worst, and
Yeah.
then you know, sort of, you know, you're ready for anything then. So it was like, yeah, I was well aware.
Mhm.
You know, if Steve was going to tackle this, then it was going to be done.
Gritty, honest.
Yeah, pretty honest,
Yeah.
and you know, with no safety nets.
Or yeah, that's one way to put it. And did you either independently or with Steve kind of create a backstory for this guy? Because I think one of the things that's been very interesting to follow after seeing the film is the discussion between people who have seen it about, well, I'm absolutely convinced that he has an incestuous relationship with the sister, or you know, things like this where it's not, you know, which is I guess probably part of your goal to get people talking. But I'm curious if you yourself have answers to some of these questions.
I definitely have my own answers, and you know, Steve was like, I remember sort of said in one press conference or interview, you know, I sort of mentioned a little bit, and he's like, don't do that. He was like, you know, that's for you. He was like, and he's right. It's up to everybody to fill in those blanks. That's the great thing. You know, it's not everything is spelt out. That's life. You know, it's not that, you know, representation of life is always interesting. No, it's not. But just the right elements are given without sort of dwelling on anything or sort of overindulging in these things or using them as sort of lazy outs or sort of convenient outs. So I definitely, whenever I sort of approach a character, if it's fictional, I will go away and write my own autobiography. You know, what do the parents do for a living is always an important one. What was he like at school? Was he an academic student, or was he a sporty student? Was he a loner? Was he a more sort of popular character? You know, all these things. What does the character like to eat? What's his favorite dish? What does he like to drink? Those sort of things, just to flesh it all out and sort of have a real confidence about who you are and where you're coming from, what you're trying to get to, you know.
And I guess a last obvious question pertaining to that one is, you had to know, you and Steve, when you're making it, that based on the kind of way that you were approaching it, it's going to be hard to get it into theaters before large audiences. I guess the same thing might have been true of, you would have to say, of Hunger as well, and it did get... the mission was accomplished, it was seen, but is that a concern that, you know, how do you get it to a wide audience? And then also, what do you hope that the audience who does see it takes away from it? It's, you know, is there not a message, but a point that you want them to leave with?
Me personally, not. I think that it's just, we felt like this was something that was relevant, and it felt like we thought it was important. You know, that we were that there was an observation here of the sort of the lifestyle that we sort of lead, and the sort of world that we're occupying at the moment, where there's so much information, so much available, so much being sold to us all the time. And how does that manifest itself? You know, whether that means it comes out in an unhealthy relationship with food, gambling, drink, drugs, or sex. And for sure, I don't have any points to make. I don't know the answers, that's for damn sure as well. I mean, the important thing for me is to pose the questions, to provoke thought, to get people to sort of maybe reflect on themselves or see themselves on the screen. I tried to sort of, that's why for me, you know, when I was sort of tackling Brandon and trying to sort of bring this character to life, I tried to keep it as close to me as possible. So it could be any guy on the street, that I wasn't sort of hiding behind anything or taking, again, a sort of an exit of some sort, or a convenient out. And so that it's just, what do we do? Why do we behave like this? Why do we treat ourselves in certain ways and others, and our relationship with ourselves and others, and how we're trying to sort of, you know, figure everything out, why we're here, what are we doing, you know, and what's the point? And this you know, this unfortunate character who's trying to find intimacies, and he's trying to find intimacy, he's trying to find a connection, and yet he's terrified of that intimacy, and so it's an ongoing battle, you know, with the guys. It's not that he's unaware he's aware that he's suffering from this illness and he's trying to sort of deal with it.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.